learning experiences of space. And as a child, our experiences are intermingled with dreams and imagination as well. And that affects how we grow up to make our homes and make our spaces. So all that interests me. My other kind of side of interest is also the post-war years, the 50s and 60s specifically. I think probably for a couple of reasons. Personal reasons is that I was born in that time, and my parents met and had us as a family in that time. So my first home was a typical new post-war home built in the late 50s, and that kind of environment really interests me because I can kind of have been parallels made between the kind of reconstruction and the sort of renewal post-war with times of today where we find ourselves in a state of flux with war and people having to move from their homes and their countries and find new homes. Even though obviously the world is a very different place now from that time, there have been parallels made, and I've read and I've quote sort of writers who are looking into that. I went to a really great exhibition last year at the Barbican, Post-War Modern, which covered every sort of area of art from that time, and just reading their brochures and information about the artists, how we can kind of make parallels with artists today who produce similar types of work. So that's a bit of background about me. I think also, having been an architect, I'm very much enjoy the kind of mid-century aesthetics as well, and the simplicity, the kind of modernism of that time, and thinking back to how we imagine as children at that time, in the sort of before, for this sort of post-human technological world, things did seem a bit slower. We didn't have computers, mobile phones, and there was more time to play and imagine. And I think now everything is a bit of a sort of quick fix. We go and we visit other countries and cities, but we just take a quick snapshot with our phone, right, seeing that, move on to the next thing. And I sort of feel that we don't take time to really experience and embody spaces and really take them on board, which affects the way our memories work as well. So I'm doing a lot of research into spatial recall. So that's my kind of background. I'll stop there because I could go on forever talking about that. This project is called The Playroom, and I wrote a short story, and this is a model which goes with the story, and I use the model to illustrate my story. So you can access the story on my website. It's a QR code over there. It takes you straight to the story. It's based around memories of an extension that was built to my first childhood home. So, in my first home, my dad, who's now 92, he was actually an architect as well. In 1969, did a drawing for our house that I lived in for a playroom extension. This is the only copy that exists now. So a beautifully hand-drawn copy of the playroom. And I only lived in this house until I was 7 years old. So I only have a few memories, but I do remember certain things and I have forgotten other things. So I decided to build a scale model of the playroom extension. So this is 1:20 scale of playroom, and the story is part fiction part non-fiction. So it's a story about familiar places to me and how I come to rediscover the playroom. But I'm rediscovering this room with another child who I make friends with. And I looked into the history of the area that I grew up in, which was a place called Oby on the outskirts of Leicester. And while I was growing up in this nice, cosy, secure environment, there were, so in the early 70s, there was a lot of upheaval in Leicester, as with the whole of the UK, with industry, recession, strikes, and also there was a very large influx of Asian Ugandans into the country in 1972, and a lot of them came to Leicester to find work because Leicester was the home of hosiery trade and lots of different industries, and a lot of the workers worked at the Imperial Typewriter Factory. And in 1974, they went on strike, and it made national headlines because the people that led the strike were the women, the Asian women, and usually they weren't really listened to, but they led the strike. And they brought over from Uganda. They left in a distressed state, obviously, as Idi Amin had thrown out the Asian Ugandans. They suddenly had to just pick up their belongings, whatever they could grab, and get out of the country. Came to Europe and the UK. All this was going on while I was growing up in this cosy environment, and I wanted to learn more about it. So I read up a lot about it, and I developed a story about how, as a young child, I made friends with a young Asian Ugandan child of the same age, and we came together in this place between the city and between the suburbs, and I've called that a place called Nigeria, where you can recreate your dreams as children. But there are parts of history in this place that spring up from the earth, which is why I've got parts of Imperial Typewriter, actual genuine parts from an Imperial Typewriter coming out of the ground. I've got the slogans from the strikers, typed on typewriter onion paper, which makes up these imaginary flowers and petals. And I've got a playroom which is kind of there, but not really there. It hasn't got a ceiling, it's sort of hanging in this space. And there are a lot more illustrations of this model that are much like this picture here in the story. And the story takes real life quotes from the families who came over to Leicester from Uganda. So I went to a seminar, a talk in Leicester, where they, about 4 adults, now probably in their 60s and 70s, but they came over as young children, and they spoke about their experiences, and I took their direct quotes and used the verbatim method of writing, verbatim method theatre, but used it as in text, not a play in the theatre as such, but I used it in the story. So it's a way of expressing an issue of that time within a story using real words from people. So if you go into the story, those real-time quotes are actually highlighted in bolder text. And the way I develop ideas like this, I use a lot of collage, which I really enjoy. I draw, I photograph, and I just come up with ideas like this to help me either photograph something or build something. So this was my family home. This actually is me on the tricycle, and I made up jelly, the jelly molds, and the wrapped parcels indicate playtime in the playroom, pass the parcel, eating jellies and ice cream, all the kind of simple things in life where, you know, it was just, you didn't have a care in the world with anything else. So this is the kind of methods I use. I can't think of anything else. I think that's it. I'm very much influenced by a couple of architects actually who are architects. One of them is C.J. Lim, who writes short narrative stories and illustrations on make-believe places, combining fiction and non-fiction. So I was very much inspired by that particular architect. Has anybody got any questions? I think that's about 10 minutes, isn't it?
Claire?
Yes. Do you mind repeating the name of that artist?
Yeah, CJ, I don't know what his those initials stand for, CJ Lim, L-I-M. Yeah.
These the typewriter keys look like people looking in curiously to the
they've kind of
they've got a querying kind of what, especially the ones here. They're like the necks are craning forward almost. What's this? So it's almost like you were talking about a cosy, comforting home life with these people from the outside,
nitty-gritty,
trying to come to terms with what the new life is and what this world is.
Because those two worlds were very separate, but
they
were only within 2 or 3 miles of each other. And after reading about the history, I had no idea what was going on in Leicester itself. When I was, because you don't, do you?
No,
you don't know what's happening. I mean, the earliest thing I remember was lighting a candle when we had a 3-day week, the oil crisis or whatever.
Power cuts,
and I was a bit older then as well. So that was my first experience of like recession, Britain and strikes. But also I picked out keys that had the initials of the characters in the story. So there's Sahara, there's myself, Claire. So I picked out those.
But in terms of like aftermath, like the time of the exhibition, like is this sort of like your sort of reflections, sort of looking back on your childhood, and it's like the life afterwards, kind of almost like reimagining?
It's make believe. It's reimagining my life. What if I met an Asian Ugandan child my age from Leicester? What if we had gone to the same school? What if the same playgroup? What if? And the story is actually writes about us as young teenagers in 1979, and then as soon as we get into this magical place, because we have to access it, we suddenly turn into these 2 young girls that make friends. And there is a lot of speech in the story about our own experiences of life as young children, to highlight the issue of the Asian Ugandan coming into the country.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Gemma Moore, and I finished my Masters kind of in the autumn of last year, but graduated in January of this year. And as a practitioner, I think I'm all over the place really. So throughout my Masters, I did a lot of research around, I guess, like feminist perceptions of like city spaces. So kind of how some women kind of read city spaces and how they may, due to kind of fear, I guess, of violence, may like deviate. And I was really interested in how you'd represent that movement from like A to B, but through the lens of like fear. And I think when I finished my undergraduate degree, I kind of left it kind of responding to the case of Sarah Everard. And then when I started my Masters, I think the murder of Sabina Nesson kind of happened all at the same time. And I couldn't help but start it feeling almost quite angry. And so I thought, well, you know, it's quite a good way of like connecting the two, I guess, bodies of work together. And so I started off working kind of always within feminist kind of thinking and responding to the streets. And then as my Masters went on, I kind of became a bit more, I guess, painterly and returning to more, so kind of moving from performative ways of making to then quite painterly ways, so like more traditional. And I kind of started quite recently returning back to what I was calling mental maps, which were like depictions of maps that were obviously skewed by of intense feelings of fear and anxiety. And so this originally, this kind of painting that you see going circling the kind of sculpture in the middle is very, very long, and I had to cut it up into kind of sections, well, one section and like another section there at home. And the kind of middle, the inner ring here is chicken wire. And I kind of start off the painting and the secondary bits, I kind of see it in two pieces, if that makes sense. So A, B, and then the first section was done first. And the chicken wire was really interesting, like sculpting it at home and how much volume it had. And then of course I had to compress it to travel. And I was thinking about how it was really interesting just its journey from where it came from, which was a place near Ludlow in Shropshire, and then got it to here. And just that kind of journeying and the movement of the material, I think, really kind of contributed to the theme as well. But I was thinking about how, deliberately I wanted to make it kind of quite sculptural rather than making like a painting as a wall piece, because I wanted people to kind of think about the experiencing of the painting, walking around, and of course how that also talks about the issue that I want everyone to think about, which is, what it's like to kind of move through city spaces, perhaps slightly fearful as what could be going on around the corner, and maybe how you might deviate away from those feelings of fear. And so the kind of repetitive marks with the paint are also representing, I guess, almost like feelings of anxiety, perhaps like repetitive thoughts that can be experienced, but then also how that's also embodied in the making here. So you've got the layers and the layers of the chicken wire, and then every now and then I put a cable tie to kind of make it have a bit more tension. And there's also the sharpish kind of edges of the wire themselves, which also kind of talk about this whole idea of perhaps feeling threatened when, say, walking through spaces that are associated with antisocial behaviour. But it's also really interesting throughout my masters, I would regularly commute from home, which is kind of North Herefordshire, to Birmingham, and how extremely different those two spaces were. So you have little country lanes, and then ending up in Birmingham, and I'd often reflect on just that. The series of journeys. So you've got the journeys, I guess, within city spaces, and how I think sometimes I felt, and how that could have been influenced by, I guess, where I was from. But then also the overall journey, so the journeys between home and Birmingham, and how, I guess, my feelings were always fluctuating. But with this piece, I think I definitely perceive it as being more of a preliminary piece. I think I'd love to develop it further by making it perhaps bigger, so using a lot more chicken wire, which I do have at home, because we keep hens. And really also playing with, I guess, the manipulation of the wire and how perhaps you could extend it and make things tighter and smaller, and how also perhaps playing with light too. So I definitely read this piece as more of a beginner, well, in a way concluding the mental map series, but then also expanding the whole idea of them becoming more sculptural, which actually I never thought, I didn't really think it could be, but I think this has really allowed me to see it in that space and in that context. So yeah, does anyone have any questions?
I just think it's really interesting how the paper on the outside has got all your fears, but it's actually wrapping around the kind of sharp, kind of fearful. Is that kind of like getting a grip on the fears? Is that kind of symbolic of you sort of trying
controlling?
Yeah, trying to control the fears and trying to sort of contain it.
I think so. Yeah, because I definitely found there were times I'd be walking, and it was just you'd start reading spaces, either obviously rationally or completely irrationally, depending on the time of day as well. And I definitely found myself almost like a body of thought being this bit here, being like, no, Gemma, it's fine, stop panicking. So yeah, I think so. I definitely felt the material, the two, because they're very different qualities, and so I felt they definitely do, complement each other in different ways that I was thinking too.
It does feel as if the chicken wire could tear into the paper as well at any moment, which is, I guess, the sort of fragility of your sort of control on your fears.
Definitely, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gemma. Has anyone else got any questions? No, I think
I
that's
just
fine.
wanted to ask as well, do you find Birmingham quite a scary place then, coming from such a small town?
I think I used to when I first started studying, but I think the more time I spent there, the less. I think there were parts of Birmingham that I really liked, and other parts that I was like. But then I guess that's kind of like with everywhere. But that's kind of what I was interested in when I was doing my research, like what was it about, say, a space that would make some people go, oh, actually, I wouldn't go there, or I wouldn't go there. But no, definitely, less so now. I look back, I'm like, okay. But no, I feel a lot better than I did. Yeah. So that's good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.